Hello, YouTubers. My name is Axe Factor, and welcome back to another Battlefield Hardline YouTuber versus round. Pretty much everybody in the server either works for EA as a developer or within the community. They're a YouTuber or Twitch personality. See if you can figure out who all of them are as we're slowly getting started. This will be a medium-sized battle. I think we get up to about 11v11 or 12v12 as teams kind of balance out. This is Bank Job Heist. I actually want to take this round to be able to talk about some of my concerns about Battlefield Hardline, my overall thoughts of the beta, and kind of look back on where we came from as Battlefielders and what we've been through. Level caps to my squad. Jack Frags is messing around with Hacker, so how about we get started? But before we talk about Hardline, let's talk about where we came from as Battlefielders. When Battlefield 3 beta released, it was more of a demo. People were falling through the ground. It was an old build, and it was very buggy. There were server crashes. There was client crashes. And then when the game launched, it was very, very problematic with not just balance issues, which could be fixed if the game actually got patched in a timely fashion, but server and client issues, not to mention that net code and everything else going on with the game. And at that time, we really could have done with some community interaction with the developers, but we simply didn't have any. Those same head developers that were in charge of creating this game that got the hype train rolling were nowhere to be found on social media, forums, or Reddit, or anything. When we, as the gaming community, needed the most, they simply disappeared. For whatever reason, for whatever theory you have, there simply was a disconnect between the community and, of course, the developers. And it really strained things in the Battlefield franchise. But that ship slowly started to get righted. But the problem was there wasn't much developer-community relations. Very little at all, actually. And that was kind of the writing on the wall for what was to happen in Battlefield 4. Battlefield 4 beta came out. People were falling through the world, crashing left and right. There was frame rate issues. There was net code issues. People dying 10, 15, 20 feet behind the wall, dying in one frame. All the issues that you can remember. And then the game launched, and it was not stable whatsoever. As I'm trying to hold this area down, I'm being pinned in from 3 different angles. It was absolutely horrific. One of the worst launches I've ever seen in a game, period, end of story. And I played some real shitters. The client wasn't stable. The server wasn't stable. Falling through the world, dying behind walls. I'm talking 10 feet, 12 feet, 13 feet, one frame deaths. All that craziness. And where were the developers again at the release of Battlefield 4? Nowhere to be seen or heard from. They weren't acknowledging bugs. They weren't acknowledging issues. And sometimes that's all we need as a community. Be able to give constructive feedback. And then, of course, have that acknowledge, okay, we're working on this. We're working on that. Slowly, the wheels started to turn in Battlefield 4, and it was circling the drain, and then the CTE developers, DICE of LA, came in and pretty much saved Battlefield 4, in my opinion. The transparency came between Julian, David Serlin, and the rest of the team. These guys are very invested in the community, very invested in the product that is Battlefield 4, and we started to see changes. The client became more stable a little bit before that, and of course a myriad of changes in the CT environment. We're at a happy place with Battlefield 4. Changes are being made, good changes are being made, the netcode's improving, gunplay's improving, and people are starting to be happy with the product. A lot of people feel like that's the product that should have launched Battlefield 4. That CTE product after they had their hands on it for a couple of weeks, a couple of months to tweak things and fix some of the basic and base problems plaguing the game. So, with that being said, Hardline comes out. The beta. It's an actual beta. What do I mean by that? The developers are listening to feedback. They're very transparent, whether it's Thad Sasser, the lead multiplayer developer, or some of the level designers, or Steve Paputkis, or anybody else on the team. They were constantly transparent, open, and constantly responding to feedback on Twitter, Reddit, and of course the old Battlelog forums. Before the beta actually launched, Thad Sasser made a post. He identified gun mechanic issues, gunplay balance issues, everything from shotgun range to basically the TDK on assault rifles, not enough spread for the M16 and the M416. And a lot of this was covered at the EA Game Changers event, where there's 32 of us YouTubers, Twitch, live streamers, personalities, and Thad and other guys were working on the room. What do you think about this? What do you think about that? In Q&A sessions. And changes were made based on that because Game Changers wasn't just this one-time event. It happened 3 or 4 times, and there's massive Q&A sessions, and the game slowly started to come along. So this is actually a true beta. It got patched. you got patched. That's huge because Battlefield 3 didn't get patched. And I don't think Battlefield 4 got patched. So what am I saying here? The winds have slowly changed. DICE CTE has been a blessing to the Battlefield 4 project. The developers over at Visceral are extremely transparent when it comes to Battlefield Hardline. And this all ties into Battlefield 4 and CTE because that's where a lot of the fixes came from. Visceral actually helped the CTE team fix several different things in Battlefield 4. And the CTE team has done wonderful things, including uniform soldier aiming and a lot of those tweaks and adjustments, netcode fixes that you will see on release of Battlefield Hardline. They were in the beta, but the uniform soldier aiming and a lot of the visual stuff and the tweaks are coming to Battlefield Hardline. The other thing you're going to have is a stable product. I didn't crash once in the Hardline beta. I can't tell you how many times I crashed in Battlefield 3 and Battlefield 4 beta. Hundreds. Absolutely hundreds. It was the most frustrating thing in the world. So the Visceral team, the DICE CTE guys, have built off the success of the growing of that Battlefield 4 CTE platform in the Frostbite engine. But with that being said, we've got a stable product, I think, right now. Even at all these game changer events, I didn't have game-related crashes. I had MSI afterburner crashes that would freeze everything up because we couldn't use those hogs because they do this triple screen tearing. They're just absolutely horrible. So I don't think stability is going to be an issue. What are my issues? I've got a couple of them. The flinching. The devs have already talked about fixing that. Well, did you remove it? Did you turn it down a little bit? What did you do? The time to kill. Some people love it. Some people hate it. But the Frostbite engine isn't the best at updating. It's a very low-frequency update. It's no 128 tick server like a competitive CSGO or competitive CS server. You're not going to get that. And lightning-fast TDKs really don't play into a low refresh rate. It's going to give you 1 to 2 frame deaths depending on the strength or the range of the weapon. I've always been a fan of a medium TDK. Bring me back to that Battlefield 3 feel because the longer the TDK, the higher the skill gap. And I like having a little bit of a skill gap where it takes bursting and weapon control, not just recoil control, but the actual weapon control. Are you controlling the spread? Are you getting those bullets on target? Or are you killing somebody by holding mouse button 1, no matter what range you're really at, or the time to kill is so fast that the kill pretty much happens before the gun kicks in recoil mode and you even have to worry about spread. But all that's kind of being adjusted and worked on. And the boys over at Visceral still are struggling and trying to figure out what's best. They want to make the best game possible. So that's kind of a concern. The fake reloads are still here. The 1 frame deaths are here. And a lot of that has to do with the TDK and the way some of these weapons are set up. I mean, the AK, which is amazing, does 72 damage to the head at point blank, but it's a very, very low rate of fire and has a ton of kick. Another concern I have is something that just came to light. At the event, I used the L85. It had around a 675 to 700 rounds a minute as I'm trying to take on a couple guys topside before I even attempt giving a revive. And I use an ACWR, which is a carbine, was absolutely beast mode. We all know the carbines had a lot more spread than the assault rifles, and most likely all this is being tweaked. But these 2 weapons, along with a third, may be specific to pre-order only, and that's a major problem I have. So if you pre-order the game, you can have these 3 weapons at the start of the game, don't need money to unlock it, and that might be the only way you can get these weapons. That is a big problem for me. Now, if you can unlock these weapons, or you can save up some cash and buy them, okay, that's not too problematic. Everybody has access to them, as long as they're not a syndicate weapon. Those syndicate weapons are no joke. Some of the assignments are absolutely beastly. Not everybody will be able to get to all those weapons because simply it's just too hard. There's a lot of hurdles that you have to jump through to be able to do that. So that is one of my major concerns. The other concern, of course, is the fake reloads. Of course, is the TDK model. Will they be able to smooth that out? The gunplay felt pretty darn good in Battlefield Hardline. And balance isn't something that's ever going to be perfect. The question is, will they keep working on it? And I believe that Sasser is obsessed about nailing it. Hopefully, we'll have more frequent patches with Battlefield Hardline. That's something that plagued Battlefield 3 and Battlefield 4 at release as well. We didn't get balance updates, and if it was just a couple things. Not until the CTE boys took over did we start seeing more frequent updates. And speaking of that, we're due for a March patch in Battlefield 4, a retail patch. All these changes in CTE, the prototypes that have been tweaked and tweaked again, will finally make their way to the retail version for PC and, of course, all the consoles, as I'm trying to go this right road lane and work on a back range. So the big red flag for me is the pre-order guns. Hopefully the developers will clarify that. Hopefully this is a big misunderstanding, and these weapons will be available to everybody through a little bit of a cash grind and not just tied to pre-orders. The gunplay is still out there. The player movement looks and feels great. I really like it. The TDK, I'm a fan of fast TDKs, but I really don't think it works all that well with the Frostbite engine and its low refresh rates. It'll be interesting to see with what kind of changes they come down with. I really love the transparency that the Visceral guys have with the community on Twitter, the Battlelog forums, and of course Reddit. That's always a good sign. I'm really looking for this game to be patched often out the gate, which will really help with some of those outstanding bugs and balance issues. There is some quirky stuff with animations going on. There is some quirky stuff with some of the maps, some of the locations not being able to shoot through spots that you should be able to shoot through. But heck, we've still got that in Battlefield 3 and Battlefield 4 to this date. That's kind of being somewhat picky. This is a game that either you like this sort of flavor, this fast-paced gameplay, or you don't. This game isn't for everybody. I'm not telling you to buy the game. I'm definitely not telling you to pre-order the game. I'm telling you to make your own decision based on what you know about what's going on in the developer cycle as you see that flinch kick in. Then, of course, what you did during the beta. At the end of the day, this is 100% up to you. I've got some concerns, but there's a lot more stuff that's in the back of my head that is refreshing and is good news. The stability, the way this game plays out, the developers, their transparency. There's a lot of good stuff here, but there are a couple concerns. As always, YouTubers, thank you for watching. Thank you for hanging out, and we will see you soon.
Yeah. Rocket.